Yo, what is good? Still Spinning Podcast. Welcome. Here to remind you that we are still spinning on this planet until we move to another one, if we do. And we'll see how long this one lasts. You know, it's getting close to the sun, as they say. I don't know. But this podcast is just here to remind you that we barely know what's going on. Just to remember to enjoy your life to the fullest. Push yourself to your limits and just be curious and just try to learn as much as you can about the universe. At least I am. And today, it's more of a dunk life episode as the last couple episodes have been. And I have my boy Tyler Ray on with Project Pure Athlete. I've been a huge fan of his since I started dunking. He's about 5'11", 6 foot, not the tallest, but had incredible hops, incredible dunking skill, and was in contests and just really was somebody that inspired me to dunk just because of his pure talent. And I got to meet him for the first time at dunk camp this past year, a few months ago, and the small conversations we've had over the years, and finally got to talk in person a little bit at dunk camp. It's always great talking to him, so this was kind of long overdue, and I'm glad to have him on. And we talked about everything, of course, jump training, dunk training, and also his training methods from mindset to visualization, so the way he connects and the way he likes to educate and just really be a teacher in the sport. And it was just really cool. So I definitely see us having more conversations like this. And it was just really great to finally have a long sit-down conversation with my man Tyler. So everybody, hope you enjoy. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for watching. We're at 20K now, I believe, with the subscribers. I'm recording this before that, but I believe now we are. I'm like 70 people away. And if you want to support me, just like the video, comment, subscribe to my YouTube, subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast. All the free things really help me out a lot, helps me grow. And that's my dream, just to build my platform and my channel and provide more content like this. And I really, really appreciate it. And if you want to support me even more, you can subscribe to my Patreon. It's $1 a month. Those subscriptions really help me. And you can subscribe to my Twitch as well. I'll be gaming a lot more, especially when 2K19 comes out, boy. But yeah, all those things really help me, and donations, of course, but I do training as well online, and I have shirts. I got my new Dunk Life shirts. Anything you want to do to support me, everything helps me make my dreams come true, and I love you all for that, and I really appreciate it, and I love doing this, and we're growing, and I'm getting better, and I'm just going to keep providing more and more content, and that's it. Let's get to the episode. Tyler Ray, where you at, boy? Vertical Project Pure Athlete. We out here. All right, love you. See ya. I just gotta work and you know I'm doing that. Never stop, always on attack. Locked in the path, never getting off track. Whatever I lack, add it to my bag. And I got plenty more where that came from. And my price is right, I never change, bruh. Don't get it done right. And that's every day, that's living life. Alright, Tyler, we're live. Thank you for joining my little podcast here. Appreciate it, man. I've been trying to get a conversation with you. I know a lot of people actually requested you, by the way. So you're
right on. Well, shout out.
Yeah, man. So, thank you. And let's just jump right into it. I know you as Jukebox, so I really want to know how you got it. Let me see that. Ooh,
see the Jukebox.
I never even seen that before, even though I saw you in person. So, how did you get into dunking? How did your whole story start? How did you get the nickname? All that good stuff.
The backstory. Okay, first and foremost, man, thanks for having me on. This is awesome. Love shooting the shit, and you're doing good things over there, so appreciate it. So the history of Jukebox. So I mean, I did track and field for the University of Windsor here in Canada for 4 years. And I've always been like a big fan of dunking. I mean, I think like I tell the story a few times that like my first word was ball, and I imagine it was a little bit kindred, like it was just something that was kind of waiting to happen over the years. And I would take every opportunity I could. Like I'm sure you're the same way, where your boys would be like, "Let's go hoop and let's play basketball," and I'd be like, "Let's dunk," and they're like, "Why?" So I would kind of skip out on going to hoop, and I would just go and like lower the net down in the back when I was younger and just dunk around it. And I just fell in love with it. I think it was like through the whole like Michael Jordan, the VHSs and like the Air Up There and all those great movies over the years. So I fell in love with it. I got into track. I played basketball, volleyball, track through my whole high school career, and I got my first dunk in 10th grade. gym class, 1 foot, 1 hand, which is, kind of crazy coming from a dude that really was more known for a 2 foot.
Yeah.
But did the 1 foot, 1 foot or 1 foot, 1 hand thing in grade 10. Played around with the dunking as part of basketball for a long time. And then it wasn't really until like my track and field career kind of came to an end that I started finding all these clips online on YouTube, and like all you dunkers out there know how that is when you first type it in. And like YouTube was relatively still new when I started rolling into the game back in like 05, 06, like way back. So it was clips of like and one. It was clips of a lot of like the Arab there clips. It was like just old stuff that like now is kind of like dunk, like legendary dunk history that I fell in love with. And I kind of kept my feet wet in the dunk game. Went out one day, the University of Windsor men's basketball team was practicing, and I was finishing up a track practice, and these guys were just starting to dunk. And I kind of was walking over watching these guys go after it. So I just got a call for the ball. I was like, hit me up, and they kind of looked at me and just shake their like, nah. Yeah. So I grabbed the ball, threw a lob, because at that point, like I really didn't, really know what I was doing. I knew I could jump pretty well, but dunking was kind of secondary. So I missed the ball, hit my head on the rim, it was boop. And I came down, and I remember being like, sorry, guys, like typical Canadian, sorry, like, oops. And these dudes like cook it out of the gym, right? They're running like crazy. They're running around. And I was like, what? I didn't mean to do anything. They're like, dude, you hit your head on the rim. And I was like, at that point, I didn't really know like where that stood, because now it's so known that like head check and touching the rim with your head is such a huge thing. Back then, it was like, I didn't even see video of it yet. So I did that, went out, put a couple clips up. Chuck over at TFB hit me up, put a couple of videos out, started doing the Team Flight Brothers thing for a little bit, and then really just branched off into the world of Project Vertical and started doing my own thing with a few of my local guys, a lot of shows, and then started traveling from there and doing stuff all over. And jukebox was kind of a thing that my buddy Tam gave to me. We would go out and hoop, and it would always just turn into people going, hey man, like, you want to do 360? Go do a reverse pump, do a windmill. And he's like, dude, you're like a dunk jukebox. Oh, he's like, people just put money in and make requests. Yeah, and I was like, that's pretty dope. I like that, right? Because
that's really cool.
Everything at that time was like Air This, it was all kind of the same type of name. So I want something different that's kind of, more me and more unique. So yeah, I went with jukebox, and Tam also came up with the name Project Vertical, and he's kind of part of my history. Ideas, man. He's the ideas man, and he's a super creative dude. So yeah, no, that's really kind of
dude. That's an awesome story. Name. That's a really cool name, because now that I know that, when like I see those dunks, it's really cool to have a name that kind of signifies that you got your bag. Now it's like they kind of say you got it in your bag. You got your like whatever dunks you can do. But that's really cool.
I got it in the jukebox. Yeah, it's programmed in the jukebox. There's like an old TFB clip where I'm like, I don't know whether it was the one I was talking about. Chuck goes, make a clip and make fun of special effects. Like, dude, like if you're, I know you know your dunk history, but if anybody else doesn't know special effects, like YouTube special effects, dude's crazy. But he goes, make fun of special effects, and I started talking about, jukebox, or this jukebox plays music, this one plays dunks, and it was just kind of like riffing off the top of my head. Anyway, just nostalgia.
So so you're like 5'10", 5'11"?
I would say like probably closer to 6 foot, like in shoes. Okay. I'm shrinking with age and gravity, man. So I don't even know at this point. Like, I think it's cool when you meet up with dunkers and you kind of like can kind of size yourself up, but I don't hold myself quite as high anymore.
So
as age up.
So that's not like super tall, especially back then. Like for when you're saying like before YouTube and all those things. When you were like before you got your first dunk, did you think it was possible, or did you have like where you had like natural hops, or how did that go?
Yeah, I had a certain amount of natural ability. I think because I was always so fascinated with jumping, that just jumping, produced more jump result, right? So I think over the years, I think when I went into actually training specifically for vertical jump, I had probably in that like 36 to 39 inch range pretty much out of the gate. And that was due to the training from like track. So I was a multi-eventer. I did the pentathlon. So, that was long jump, high jump. Nice. There's, hurdles, a lot of sprinting. So I was pretty explosive for the most part. But I'm a bigger, and you met me, like I'm a bigger build, like I'm a heavier guy. And even in my prime, when I was dunking and doing shows and contests, I was dunking at probably 200, 205. at like 5'11", 6 feet. That's a heavy dunker. So
thick.
For me, like that's some thickness. Yeah. So yeah, it was more of like, for me, it was just like managing my body breaking down all the time. It was like strength work, kind of cycle through, and then really just trying to mitigate the effects of gravity plus fat plus landing,
right?
Like all that stuff.
So you got your first dunk, and then you had a pretty good out the gate because you were jumping. Like, then you had your head at the rim. So did you have like formal training? Is that when you like research into jumping, or is it?
Yeah, so I mean, I went through school for human kinetics, and I think I fell in love with just the like human locomotion and performance in general. I just wanted to know what made the body tick. I wanted to know how to kind of milk every little bit of energy out of my body first and foremost. So yeah, like as I was in university, I became a personal trainer. So that was back when I was like 20, and I started playing around with some stuff on myself. And I tell my athletes like, I don't do anything with you that I haven't personally tried, so that I know that it has merit, and I also know that it's not BS, and it's also I'm not just going and searching a bunch of shit and throwing it on paper. So I spent about 11 to 13 months after track was over, really putting in a lot of focused effort on jump training. And when I say the word jump training, I think this is like super important. I'm sure you would agree that like jump training is strength and conditioning with a shift in bias towards the protocol that are vertical jumping, right? Like it's not, you don't just go out and just jump train, like jump and plyos and plyos and plyos. Like you just explode that way. Yeah. Like you have to have a foundation created before you start piling on layers of specialty and sport specific stuff. So that's kind of what happened is I spent a good 13 months after having already created a base trying to fine tune and do that detail work. And yeah, within that 13 months, I think I went from 38, 39 inches, probably closer to that 46 to 48, like depending on that, on the jump when things lined up. I mean, we all know that the golden jump where like the moon, the sun and the earth, they all line up. For sure. And the gravitational forces are perfect and all that stuff feels good. So yeah, it was a process, but I learned a lot.
That's awesome, man. So when you said you was training at like 20, so did you have training in mind? Like, was that something you had, or when you started researching, you kind of like started to understand that you loved like training?
It kind of came over time, man. Like I always maintained. So I finished my honors in HK, and then I went into Bachelor of Education. So I became a teacher. And what I fell in love with before training was educating. I fell in love with the process of teaching, and that's more so what my love is even now. While I love, jump protocol and physiology, I love all that stuff. I'm more of an educator first and then a scientist second.
Awesome.
Where I think a lot of guys in the game now like are both, but there's a lot of like science and then learn how to coach it after.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really cool.
It was really about becoming how to connect with you, right? Like if I'm working with you, I need to be able to get everything I want out of you with using my voice and my body. I need to be able to show you what I want. The finer details, the subtleties of training are in the way we move, or in the way we communicate, both verbally and non-verbally. So that was the love that I had, was how do I affect change in everybody?
Yeah.
And people learn different, right?
Yeah,
we know they learn differently. So that's what I fell in love with.
Dude, that's really cool, because it's like, I really like how you like kind of learn that really fine detail about yourself, because I feel like I'm doing the same thing with myself. Like I love the energy behind it. Like I love making videos and I love dunking myself, but I also love like when other people get that same energy, because it's like I know that when I see videos, I love one of my favorite things about watching other people dunk, or like people like especially like dunking in a crowd or something like that, is like that energy, or even like that someone feels like they can do it now. Because like when I watched videos, like you said, like there wasn't that many videos back then. So when I saw like my boy Andy Nicholson, he was like the first person I saw that like went from just touching to dunking. It was like it showed me it's possible. So like that feeling is like the feeling I want to like reciprocate. So
yeah, it's empowerment, man. Like you're good at empowering people, and that's one thing I noticed with you is that yes, you're a dunker and an athlete, but you're like an entertainer. You're an empowerer. You're a coach. Still, you're a coach. You just coach with your strengths, right? And your strengths is the ability to get things out of people through energy, through entertainment, through, just leading by example.
Right. That's awesome.
Which is good.
Appreciate that.
Hey man,
Yeah.
I see you.
I see you
I
too,
keep
boy.
an eye. People think I'm like I never look and I'm always busy. I
He's
don't
looking.
respond to people. Like I always look.
Always looking.
I find out who's doing their thing, like
So
organically.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's awesome. So back to your like travels with dunking. Did you
Yeah.
like see it when you were like traveling and doing all those contests? Did you see it as like a career? Or did you kind of just see it as like a cool experience that you were just kind of like enjoying, or how did that go?
I was more to the side of just enjoying myself because I think that I knew out of the gate that while I was a talented athlete, I wasn't like that 0.5% that we know that have videos that go into the hundreds of millions and are half human, half robot. So I knew that I could. I could hold my own, and I think that was a vessel for me to affect more people and educate. So I always looked at it like an opportunity to reach more people. I loved it. It was a passion, but it was more for the experience. It was more for, I didn't have any expectations. I think I just knew that if I went out and I did what I knew I could do, that I would be as good as I could be. And that was enough for me. Like I think a lot of people get caught up in like that there is better than here all the time. Like if I'm that
Right.
good, like then I'll be happy with everything. And maybe that's not always the case with me. I was just trying to enjoy like every step, and whatever happened it happened, whether how cliche that is, but that's what I got out of it. So then when I talk to athletes, that's what I can reflect on that and say, you're going to be a successful athlete, but like don't forget to keep your eyes open every now and then and figure out what you're doing, right? So
sure.
no, it was more of an experience for me.
That's really cool. Did you have like a favorite contest or a favorite country or something you went to?
Hell yeah, man. I've been to a handful, but I think like the most fun I had at a contest was when I went to Russia for the Moscow Open back in I think 2012. I can't remember the year. That's how far back it is for me. Anyways, it was a year, one of these years.
Yeah.
I went with a handful of guys. Not only did I get to go to compete against some of the best dunkers in the world in Russia, we got to stay in the Olympic Stadium, and like it's Russia. Like who goes there? Like first of all you had to like apply for a travel visa. So they needed to know where you were every second. Like if you're gonna fart, they needed to know that. Like what time do you plan on farting at? Just so I know that's you. So that was a process, man.
Yeah.
Like, but going there, and it was not only myself, but I got to put in a team. So Moscow Open is one of the world's biggest 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, and 3-on-3 in Europe and Russia is massive. It's a sport. These guys train for 3-on-3 basketball. It was at a court. It was like a half court with a stadium all the way around it with a jumbotron. It was the first time like I rolled out to a jumbotron with like my face and my stats and like an intro song and all this stuff. So I was nervous as shit. Like I was shaky, but super fun. I got to go.
Was it cold?
What's that?
Was it cold there at that
Nah,
time?
man, it was summer. It was in the middle of
thinking,
summer.
like, I don't know. It's always cold.
We rolled up. We went on our dog sled. We had the hats on. We're like mitts.
Jesus.
I'm up next. But no, I mean, I was dunking with like Shal was there, Kristaps was there, Smoove was there, myself, Just Fly was there, Chase was there. Like it was pretty stacked. It was and it was cool, like because these are all like 1 foot dudes that are nasty.
Yeah,
to watch them dunk in person was really humbling and really cool. So that was probably my favorite. I got to put in a Project Vertical basketball team, so I sponsored a 3-on-3 team that had a handful of guys that came over and they got it. I was so happy that like I got to allow other people to experience it too, and that were friends of mine. So I brought Chase with me. I brought his boy Hayden, Tyrone, Derek. These 4 ballers that are just outrageously good basketball players. Tyrone's like 7'1", so we had this dude that rolled in, and we were on the subway the one day, and he was like sitting, holding the handrail that's meant for standing, and people beside him, and it was cool to hang out with these dudes, and it was Russia, so I think like 1 + 1 equals the best time ever. So that was awesome. That's
really cool, dude.
Yeah, man.
It's just cool how it like took you out of. It's just so crazy that you went from like just kind of loving basketball to now like traveling with it. And it
opened a lot of doors.
Yeah, I would assume so. Is that kind of like what led you to like start your own brand and like kind of like got your own practice, I would call it?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I always had so I started producing jump program back in probably 09 when I was comfortable with it. Because like for me, when you put something online, you're now accountable to it, right? You're absolutely accountable to that. So for me, I spent almost 3.5 years before I released it, making sure that it was something that I was very comfortable with. You know, I wasn't techie. I didn't really know what I was doing. I had to get a lot of help. And once I had something, I put it out there, and it was like, I knew that I needed to have an identity beyond the name Jukebox. Like I know I needed something bigger than me to be sustainable. You know, as much as I try not to be, like, I have to be a bit of a businessman at times, because this is how I have lights in my house and a house and a car and all that stuff, right? Like this is what I do full time, like not the online stuff, but like I'm a strength conditioning coach and a jump technique specialist full time. That's what I do. Yeah. So I had to put a lot of, I had to lay a lot of the foundation down to make sure that it had longevity to it. So I knew that I always wanted a label or a brand. It was Project Vertical to start. That became just the jump program, and then I started Project Pure Athlete back in like 2010, and that became my training label because I wanted to be able to train all athletes initially, and then as the years went on, my focus started to taper and narrow toward jump biased sports, because that's where my love was. That's where my knowledge base was. From my studies, from my experience, but mostly from that being an athlete and the combination of all of those. So, yeah.
Dope, dude. So now when you're doing jump training, like, is it mainly like high school kids? Is it, or just anybody there? Or is it mainly like kids that are already playing sports and jump training, obviously?
Yeah, so I think, locally I have about 35 athletes that come in and out of my athlete academy throughout the weeks. They're about 90% volleyball players. I have a handful of basketball players, a couple of hockey players, and like one track athlete. And that's kind of like my day-to-day, right? Yeah. Like that's where I go in the morning, I go to the gym, I train these athletes about 4 or 5 hours a day, and then I manage the online component to things. And that's the online stuff is what has helped drive a lot of the interest around my local stuff. But yeah, I do strength conditioning for all sports, and then I specify with that jump technique protocol for my jumping athletes, as well as just generalized explosive strength and conditioning. I think that's where my focus is really shifted toward, is how do I make these athletes feel so empowered that they're rock stars. When they touch the ground, it's going to explode. Like that's my goal, is to get not only them physically more capable, but mentally is like big time, right? And the power. I think you're the one dude like that can really resonate with this. Yeah. How powerful your brain is beyond for human performance.
I just had that like switch flipped in my head, because I've always been like realistic, but a little bit too realistic, that it held me back, because I'd go into a session thinking I should be able to like get this dunk. I have good training. I jumped well the last session. Now I'm even fresher. I should be able to, but like I could not see myself actually doing it. So I didn't do it for literally years. And then within a few weeks of me just like, I actually read that book, Think and Grow Rich. Have you read that book?
Yeah, I have read that book. Yeah.
So like they talked about how like the mind is basically like the in between like the spiritual world and our physical world. And it was kind of about money, but like I applied it to any goal. So basically like visualize it and just see it. And so I did that, and it helped. And I definitely felt a huge difference, and it like kind of changed my training routine, because usually like the day before a dunk session I'd like take it easy to try to like get like potentiate and warm up and then go hard the next day. But then when I was actually visualizing myself hit a dunk I've never hit, I'm like, I need to hit this on a lower rim, only like 9.9, not like a super low rim, but just like, I was like, I haven't even hit it. I've hit it on 9.9, but I haven't hit it clean where it felt like I could go harder and faster to hit that next level. So I did that the day before, got it done, and I felt like a difference, and then the next day I was able to hit my goal. So like that's a huge thing for me now. I still struggle with it, because it's like it's hard to like believe in something you haven't done yet, but that's kind of the key. So like you definitely do that with your athletes. Like I know you said you did, but like, so is that like, do you see like a lot of them having like a struggle with that, or they don't really even think about that yet? Or
I think that I spend a lot of time in sessions trying to lay that foundation and framework mentally, so that when they're in that setting and in that scenario, they're more likely to default to that confident state where they're like, I can see it. It is possible. I see a lot of female athletes. I have a lot of and when it comes to females and it being explosive and jumping, something that's not biologically as natural. It's not something that comes to as many females as it does males. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it is the confidence element, and for them to know that they're capable of a lot more than they think. And I think for all athletes to understand that, like, your ceiling for potential is already higher than you know. It's already you're already stronger than you know. You're already more powerful than you know. You already have better positions than you know. We just got to get you there, so that you can kind of let it ruminate, and you realize that those are accessible to you more frequently than you think. But the mind, and like, I think what your viewers and listeners need to realize is that they see guys like you or guys like me back in my prime, and you see the dunks, you see the good stuff, right? And I think what I love is that you post everything. Right. You're like, I'm working on this stuff. Mm-hmm. And the amount of work and repetition that goes into making a dunk look easy is sometimes baffling to people. Mm-hmm. Where they'll see, like, I remember I used to roll into a gym, kind of strap up, get a little bit warm, and then like lob windmill, like, to warm up. People are like, man, like, that dunk's so easy for you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, now it's easier.
Exactly.
It used to not be easy for me. Mm-hmm. Just like, I would East Bay pretty consistently, and being, even when I was heavier, because my hands were on point, I had that transition down. But I miss a lot to make a lot. I remember being interviewed one time and saying I probably miss 75% of my attempts in a session. Yeah. Because I try shit that I don't know whether, I have to do it to know whether it's possible, and I have to drill it to know that it is possible. Right. So I think you have a similar setting, and I love how you just, like, no holds barred, like, you put it all on the table, and you're like, people, look, I'm trying my hardest. I'm getting better. And here's what's up. Like, here's the process that I go through. Here's how frustrated I get. Here's how hard it is. Here's how, I feel when I fail. Here's how I feel when I succeed, because that's all part of the ride. That's what creates an athlete.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. I started that because, like, like you said, when YouTube started, there wasn't that many videos. Like, I saw Andy's videos and I saw, like, Kilgannon's videos, but I would literally watch them, and I was doing the same thing because I would be barely getting dunks or getting dunks here and there. So if I had a session where I got no dunks, I'm like, why am I going to upload this? Like, there was no incentive. And so when I saw other guys, I would see them post a video, then a couple months later hit a new dunk, and I'm like, well, what happened in those 2 months? Like, I have no idea. So I'd ask a question and they might respond, and then that's when it hit me, like, I should just post. Since I'm having success now and I learned so much over the years, I should just start posting. And that's what I try to tell people too, is to document as much as they can, because I still struggle with that too. Is like, when I go to document, or if I had a good jumping day and now I have a few bad days in a row, I'm like, what's going on? Like, what happened? So I go back, and that's what's great about my videos too, is they're almost like just documentation. I can go look, like, what I was doing when I made those increases.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the cool part, and something that I'm sure you're figuring out, is that what works for your buddy, right, is not necessarily going to work for you, but what does work, and what the message you're spreading across is, what does work is persistence over time. That's the thing that works, because our bodies respond to different stimuli, right? Where you might respond to lifting heavier and doing contrast. I might respond a little bit more to speed and athletic work. So it's understanding that when I get a lot of questions, right, through social media. It's a lot of what is the best exercise? Yes. What, do you pick squats or deadlifts? Yeah. Like, I'm sure you get the same, and we see them pop up, and I refrain from answering most of them because they're difficult to answer. Yes. And as a professional, I don't answer those questions unless I'm able to assess people. Mm-hmm. So what I try to do is just give, like, generalized concepts that people can kind of adopt. And even when I put my stuff online as workouts, the disclaimer goes up that, while this might help, 80% of the people, 20% of you might not respond to this type of training. Right. And it's okay, because I don't claim to have the best training or that this is the be all end all. Right. This is something that has worked for a lot of athletes, and I urge you to try it. So that's it.
And that's exactly why I love having you on, because it's like, now I can kind of get those questions out there, and then like long form, instead of just responding yes or no to, like, squats or deadlifts, you can kind of explain that. So that's awesome. So now, kind of going into the jump technique is like, if someone's not responding, how would you tell someone to kind of diagnose themselves, to try to figure out if they need to do strength or plyos? I kind of ask that a lot, but I'd like to get a kind of a cumulative answer from, like, all the different experts.
Yeah. So I think one of the main points, probably one of the easiest thing for people to do, is to figure out and find out what type of jumper you are pretty much out of the gate. I think that's going to help iron out a lot of the issues out of the gate. So jump types or jump archetypes, typically there's speed jumpers, power jumpers, and then for me, neural jumpers, or very just CNS heavy elastic jumpers. Someone like a Just Fly that touches the ground for about 5 milliseconds and is off the ground, right? So finding out where you lie, and then how do I determine what type of jumper I am is probably the question that you get out of the gate. So what I do is initial testing. What I'll have done is I will do a counter movement jump, which is just a stationary jump to a target, and then a full approach jump.
Right.
And what I do is you can determine with pretty good accuracy the type or the archetype of a jumper based on the deviation between those two jumps. So if you have an athlete that has a massive discrepancy between their counter movement jump and their run or their full approach jump, likelihood is that they're a much more speed oriented athlete. If they're pretty on par out of the gate, and this is again for a lot of times for like the developmental or newer athletes, this plays a little bit more true. Is if they're, let's say for instance your counter movement jump was a 28-inch effort, but then your full approach was 30, 29, somewhere in there. My instinct as a coach is going to be, well, you're not able to express speed by any means, right? You're developing, you're relying on that absolute power output. I need to be in contact with the ground for a long period of time to be able to elicit a lot of force to be able to leave the ground. Versus I might have an athlete come in that has a standing 26-inch vertical, but you give them 2 steps and they're jumping like 34, 35.
Yeah.
I was that jumper. My stationary jump was at its highest, I think, was 33 or 34 inches, which, in the grand scheme of things is pretty good, not great. But you gave me 2 steps and I will add a foot to that.
Wow.
Right? I will add a foot to a jump if you give me a couple steps. And that was just like, I remember I could do a one-handed dunk off a vert. At my best, I could squeeze in a 2-handed dunk off vert, but I could single step between the legs off the bounce, off one step. I just needed like a little bit of momentum so that I could amortize a little bit more speed, and then I could express that as power versus just having to be absolutely, beastly and be powerful into the ground. So determining the type of athlete you are out of the gate is going to probably iron a lot of the issues and allow you to dictate where your training should start. So for me, if I have an athlete that is very power oriented but can't convert that speed, then their training bias out of the gate is going to be largely toward stability protocol for hips, knees, ankles, and midline and trunk, so that they can now introduce more speed. And then it will be a lot of just that patterning and footwork for them, learning how to accelerate through a takeoff, learning how to accelerate into a takeoff. Because I think the biggest mistake that an athlete can make is by trying to improve their technique, always doing a full approach is like the number one error. Yes. And I think I pulled you aside at one point, I believe at the camp, just to show you some of the drills and being able to like take a jump and kind of, we talk about like Tarantinoing a jump and like working it backwards from the end so you can find out what the full thing is at the end, is saying, okay, if I got to get this athlete off the ground, they first have to get to that takeoff point, right? If you're not getting to that takeoff point consistently in a relatively similar position, then every jump's going to be slightly different and your body has different stimulus to adapt to. So I want to create what are called engrams, or these kind of neurological pathways that the body is more likely to choose that pathway on takeoff versus every single time not really knowing what's going on. So patterning the penultimate stride on its own. If people don't know what the penultimate stride, that's the second last stride. So as a right-left plant, I think you're a right-left plant as well, is your right stride. So it's pushing from the left foot into the right foot, learning how to create speed with that step versus creating arc.
Yes.
Right. We don't want to create an excessive amount of arc, or we're going to be working against a lot of gravity and ground contact forces. So we've got to blend them. We got to find that like marriage of speed and power. And that's what's really going to get people to jump higher is, how do I get a powerful athlete to implement more speed to complement their power? How do I get a speed athlete more power to complement their speed, or more power to complement their speed?
And then again, just try to reiterate it again, is like all those things is like there's so many variables. So it's just like, even if you're jumping like off the vert and your approach is good, there's probably some technique you can work on. A lot of times, like even mine, like I was jumping so well off a full approach, but then like I got a little stronger and I felt like it worsened my full approach because I was like almost running too fast now.
Yep.
So it's like there's an optimal speed. Is there like would you say there's like an optimal speed, or like for people, some people can run full speed, some people can run like.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and that's one of, so I have a product called the Jump Guide, which is basically the Project Pure Athlete Principles of Jump Technique. It's really just educational, an educational service, educational product. One of the concepts in there is called maximum controlled velocity, or your MCV, which is basically determining that healthy balance between how much speed is enough speed to create energy, but not so much speed that we can't control it, right? Because I say power is awesome, but if you can't harness your power and express it, then you might as well not have it, because it's just sitting there untapped.
Right.
So it's, yeah, absolutely. I think there is certain athletes can handle a quicker approach. I had a very fast approach but I was a very stable athlete, and especially through my lower limbs. So like low limb tissues, tib anterior, calf, soleus Achilles, into the ankle, the talar joint of the ankle being very stable. But I did a lot of bounding, hopping, single leg work. My training is heavily weighted towards unilateral loading, basically for the correlation to spinal health, but also like if you can create strength independently, limb to limb, because you spend very little time bipedally side by side in that position, unless you're going for maybe a broad jump. Even off a 2-foot jump, when you approach, your feet are staggered. You're loaded a little bit more on one hip versus the other hip. So it's going to be a matter of like, let's get these legs strong independently of each other, because along with that strength and unilateral strength comes stability in those positions. So I had you stand in that penultimate position. And if I'm not mistaken, I remember it was difficult to hold that position. It's very hard through the joints, but a lot of it is through the kinetic connection with that midline and trunk into the hips. Is how do I make these parts of my body work synergistically together without bleeding tons of energy everywhere?
Yeah.
So lots of stability. I think I'm probably just like going off on tangents here, but
I love it.
I think the moral of the story is find out what you are.
Yeah. And
then we can eliminate some of the excessive work that might not necessarily be what you need at this point.
Yeah. That just leads me to our boys, Ryan Garces and Josh Barina, the Spider Penalisi, because like I noticed they both have great form, and they both basically jump their highest off like basically just like one step penultimate, and they're both volleyball players, or I think Ryan started as volleyball, I'm not sure, but I just saw him play volleyball recently. Do you think they're good at that step because they just practice that the most?
Absolutely. Sort of cut you off, but
no.
Yes, like
volleyball. I want that, like able to do that, so I can just do drop step dunks all day.
Well, volleyball is a sport that is entirely dependent on jumping. Whether you are attacking or blocking or transitioning. I mean, there's a variety of different jump styles in volleyball: single leg jumping, 2-leg jumping, right side, left side, like middle, which is different than right side. So I think the ability for them to have patterned it without really even paying attention to it, it's just byproduct of the game, really benefited them. I mean, I know Jordan Kilgannon was a volleyball player as well, played some volleyball. Sherman Sue plays volleyball. Like a lot of these dunkers, I played volleyball. I was a volleyball player as well.
Oh, nice.
Sorry. But 100%, I believe that the necessity of jumping to volleyball will help a dunker for sure. That being said, I don't think you need to stop dunking and go play volleyball for a while and then go back to dunking. I think what we can learn from that is the positions and the jump style of a volleyball player is almost the same every single time. You have momentum created from an initial kind of fall into an approach, and then you have a pretty aggressive push into that penultimate, and then a massively aggressive punch.
Yes.
And that's why that cue I cue all the time is push punch, right? Push punch. So they, I think, just have learned to be super aggressive through that last 2 strides, which is probably the most work I do with jump technique for athletes that probably didn't have that in their background, is how do we finesse those
Yes.
last two strides.
I love that because it's like they seem to just get their highest off one step. And as like a dunker and just also trying to dunk in game is like if I can get that one step, get my highest, that'll like open up so many opportunities. And also I just don't like relying on like 4 or 5 steps to like run from an angle, and like when I come from a different angle then I like mess up. It would be so nice to have. I really feel like that's what I'm missing as well, because I don't do that many vert jumps and I don't do that many drop steps. So I feel like by doing more drop steps it'll make me that so solidified that like as long as I get that one step, I'm good.
I think what you could even serve to benefit from is implementing like a 2-step jump, which is something that I posted a lot recently, in as a part of a contrast set. So like if you were to do any type of contrast training and you might do say like a squat to a box jump,
Okay.
instead of doing a squat to a box jump, I do this with my volleyball players and basketball players, is we do something like a squat or a heavy split squat into 2-step jumps. So now we're implementing technique and plyometric output into a contrast set right in their training. So nice. That means it's not that like you only work on technique when you're on your field of, or you're on your court of play.
Yeah.
It's that we're trying to reinforce technique in the gym while they're under different types of stimulus and stress, so that when they're in the gym, their body is just so used to performing fatigued, it's used to performing highly fine-tuned and CNS just volume knob all the way up.
Yeah.
You need to be aware, you need to be able to jump in all of those settings to be an effective athlete, because it's not everything's going to line up all the time, right? You're not going to roll into the gym and feel great every day. You got to be used to performing patterns that are consistent no matter how fatigued you are. So
yeah.
Yeah.
In your training, do you see, like most people know squats, deadlifts, plyos, jumping. With your athletes, do you see something that seems to be overlooked by like a majority of people? Some kind of aspect?
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I necessarily overlook, but I think certain things get weighted too heavily in my professional opinion. Things like heavy deep squats. Like, I don't think, in my professional opinion, you don't need to be heavy barbell squatting to be a successful athlete. It can work for some people, and I think if it's working for you, don't stop it. But what I'm saying is, I think that you don't need it as prevalent in a program as people think it needs to be in there. I think you can get similar stimulus from a couple different variations of exercise that maybe have it's really all about managing risk to reward ratios, right? So if I get an athlete loaded heavily in a back squat and for some reason they're out of position and their back goes out, then I'm not doing my job as a coach.
Yeah. So
we use a lot of like heavy sled work. The reason being is I can get a lot of posterior engagement from a sled without the eccentric effects of lengthening the muscles. So I don't necessarily have my athletes be as sore. So their training can progress at a different rate during certain movements. I don't do a lot of barbell deadlifting, but we do trap bar deadlifting. We do a lot of single leg deadlifting, and a lot of dumbbell deadlifting. So we do a lot of different things that put different stresses on the tendons and the muscle bellies. So
do you, in those deadlifts, or a hex bar, do you avoid the eccentric phase as well, or those you do eccentric as well?
Those I would do eccentric, and it's not saying that like I would try to avoid eccentric loading in everything. I think that the benefit is that you can use a sled more frequently to supplement posterior training, right. Whereas maybe you'd have to wait a longer period of time to like work the posterior chain if you're just primarily doing loaded hinging with barbells and things like that. So it's just a matter of like, I think you can implement heavy sled to kind of take away some of the risk of soreness. Sometimes if you have athletes say peaking and you want to have an athlete fresh, but you still want to give them a heavy stimulus, you can use something like a sled and then not necessarily have to worry about them being buried after something like that.
Interesting.
So lots of different stuff. And a lot of heavy like split squat work or rear foot elevated work, versus like I'll do a cycle where maybe on one cycle I will do a squat cycle with them, but then the next time through their strength cycle, instead of squats, I might have them doing heavy rear foot elevated as their main movement, or I might have them I use a lot of heavy goblet squatting, and I think a lot of people, there's a lot of coaches in the industry that go like, why are you goblet squatting with your elite athletes? I love the correlation to thoracic, upper back, shoulder stability and health. I love the breathing that can be done with the dumbbell out front. I love the effects it has on the abdomen and the midline. And I love how friendly it is in getting people into good positions, because a lot of the issues I get with my basketball and volleyball players are super tight ankles out of the gate. And you can do a lot with a goblet squat for creating good positions. And it's more empowering. Like we talked before.
Yeah.
Yes, the physical and the physiology behind the training is important. But for me is, how can I make my athlete experience success in the gym so they leave there feeling empowered?
Right.
If I try to throw an athlete under a barbell that's got garbage mobility and I'm like, well, you have to back squat.
Yeah.
If you don't back squat, you're not going to be a good athlete. But then they leave the gym going, I suck ass at back squatting and my body hurts all the time because I can't get to these positions. Then that's going to be discouraging to a certain degree. So I want to put that athlete in something that they're successful with. And a lot of times is I can put them in a really good goblet squat and they feel really good about it.
You can have yourself a lot of goblins over there, dude.
The goblin squat.
So have you yet, this is probably an out there question, but have you had any athletes come in there that are specifically training just to dunk? Or, I mean, I know you have basketball players, but any that are just like specific to dunking?
In my gym currently, no. Locally is hard, right? Like where I live, there's not I was like the only dunker around for the longest time.
Yeah.
A lot of basketball players that are interested in being able to dunk better. I'm currently working with a guy by the name of Antoine Chandler, who was playing in the Canadian Basketball League last year for Windsor Express, and now he's moved up to Sudbury, actually closer to where Jordan lives, and he'll be starting point guard for them next year. But he's like 5'10". He's got like a 42, 43 inch vert. He can bang on like off dribble windmills and stuff. He's like, I knew of you. I found you online. It was a no-brainer for me because you were a professional dunker and a basketball player and all this stuff. And he goes, I want to be able to dunk better, but I also know that the training required for that is also just going to make me a better athlete. So we've been putting in work.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's like, it's different than I'm used to. He's been coached by some pretty elite strength and conditioning coaches. And he's like, I love this stuff. He's like, I feel so good. Yeah. He's like, I feel like I can play more frequently. And that's the thing is I take a much more low volume approach to training. And that being said, like there's times for volume, but I think as a grand scope of my training system it's a lower volume approach just for the purposes of the correlations to like mental health and strength and things like that. So
nice.
It's working.
Yeah, that sounds good, man. I mean, I really like that. I mean, it's always good to like end on wins. That's another thing I learned from the visualization is like if I just like I was always doing it, but I didn't really know why. And then when I figured out why, it helped me out, and which was like I was trying to have a good session where I would just focus on technique, just try to get good jumps where my footwork felt good. And I knew it was because like I needed to like practice it and get the muscle memory. But then it was also, I didn't realize how mental it was too. Like even if it wasn't like actually building the muscle memory, if I just like leave the gym feeling like I jumped well, then at the next one I'm like, oh, I can jump well. And it's just like, I just have to like think of it more too.
Yeah, you got to have those mindful moments and like understanding that. And it's funny enough, like I think I've been doing a lot more work over, maybe it's because I'm getting older. I'm not sure, man, like what it is, but like the mindfulness behind training, but also just behind life in general it's really paying dividends into my training protocol with a lot of my athletes, because I feel that my strength as a coach is my ability to be empathetic toward people and read them a little bit and understand when someone walks in the gym, I can kind of tell by their body language and how they're moving, like where they're at, and then knowing how to get them out of that little stage they're in so that they can be productive in the gym, to understand that like the shit days in training, the shit days in dunking is similar to like just weather patterns. And it's super kind of out there, but it's like it comes in, and it's out, even though it's covered in clouds, right? They talk about like the blue sky is always there. Yeah, it's always there, but there's shit in the way. You just can't see it right now. Let it pass.
Yeah, I like that. That makes perfect sense to me. Do you see yourself ever educating in another area besides sports training?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think that, I have in the past been a teacher, so there's that kind of base. But, so I was I had a 5-6 split. Grade 5-6 split class, and I taught phys ed, but I also have teachables in biology and like sociology and stuff like that. So so I can do a little bit of the science stuff and the phys ed and the kinesiology, so up to high school level. So I love teaching, but I think what's cool about like coaching is that I'm not a teacher, and when you take away that like that moniker of being a teacher, you can be yourself. And like, I've been like really good with your podcast right now, but like, I swear, like I just like, it's me. Like I try to relate to athletes because I am in my heart an athlete. So when I have like a 16-year-old kid that comes in and I could tell he's all messed up, like he's not there. Because I'm able to say, what the fuck's going on, man? Like, and he can trust me because like they trust me.
Yeah.
You have to trust your coach. You have to trust the person helping you through the process. And that's what you get at. That's how you get a lot out of people, is they got to trust you.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe not like educating in like a formal sense, but like I feel like you have a similar mind to mine. Is like you're trying to you diagnose yourself, you kind of figured out like how to be a better person and like all these things that help, and now you see it in other people and want to help them. Do you ever see yourself trying to help them in like just like a life perspective type of way?
So yeah, like I mean, with my current athletes, that's something that happens organically for sure. And frequently what I'll do is I'll have an athlete come in 30 minutes before like a training session, and we'll sit down. And we'll do goal setting, or we'll just sit there and like I'm just a rebound for them to just be able to talk and just help them gain perspective. Because I think as an athlete's greatest gift is their ability to maintain perspective on the process, that you don't get so tied up to realize, like we talked before, you don't get so tied up to not realize that you're playing a sport. You should be having fun.
Right.
If you're not having fun, then something's up. Like there's something else going on. So 100%, I think that I would love the opportunity to, on a bigger stage, a bigger forum, to be able to speak to the power of mental health as it relates to sport performance.
Yeah.
And if I can tell a quick story, if that's cool.
Of course, yeah, man,
awesome.
I'd love that.
And it's a dunk camp story, so you were there. So we had I got to work with a lot of athletes during that week, and it was like that was an awesome week, and I can't wait for next year to get back there and get back to. Yes, I'm going to be there. I'm already booked in, so I will be there, and lots of cool stuff planned for next year. We learned a lot from this year, so we know how to, like we were talking about, we got to tighten up the gears a little bit, but it'll be good. So yeah, I was doing the initial testing with people, and there was an athlete there. Won't name names, but you could tell he was really in his head. And I think it was the combination of like, you're at the dunk camp, you're kind of by yourself. There's a lot of new people and faces around. Not everybody has that like swaggy confidence that like whatever comes my way, I'm good. Some people are, and like myself, I hit it really well, but like you have that high anxiety that just rides and rides and rides. And if you can't figure out how to manage anxiety in a performance state, that anxiety does a lot to affect our ability to neurologically fire. It affects the ability of some of our muscles to flex and contract. Like all of these things are associated to our brain first and foremost, right? Brain controls the body. So if we have anxiety, we get a lot of this like chest breathing where you'll see people kind of living up here. Their shoulders are up tall. I see it in approaches all the time. Everybody's all up in here, and I'm like, "What are you doing up there, man? Like, what's going on up here? Come down here where everything's still cool." Yeah. And this is how I coach, like just how I'm talking to you. Like, what's going on right now? Yeah. So awesome. I walked over to him, and he kind of whiffed his first little swing, and I kind of put my hands on his shoulders, and I said, "Everything's good." And I just like looked at him, and I could see him clear as day do this. Like chest down, shoulders down. And I said, what I want you to do is I want you to load this jump quick. I want you to take a big breath. I want you to let all your air out as you jump. And if you hit it, awesome. If you don't, awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, breathe. So I stepped aside. Dude, load the jump. Three more spindles.
Yeah.
Boop, 3 inches. And he goes, his eyes are like, big as day, right? And he walked over and he was like so happy. He was so like monotone the whole day. And he was smiling and his eyes were open. And he said, thank you. And I said, listen, it's not a thanks. It's just understand that you got this, man. Everything's cool. We're in a safe spot. Everybody's here to support you. Yeah. And it's a lot of times just getting athletes to manage and regulate the anxiety, because that's what I had to do as an athlete, because I was a higher anxiety athlete. And I think that's what I relate to are those athletes a great deal, is learning how to use your breathing to your advantage. A lot of breathing work being done in the industry right now, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
But learning how to manage your breathing to be able to optimize your performance as an athlete.
That's really cool. And like back when you said like you like the sports training and like you have fun, I think that's like the perfect way to put it, because it's like a teacher is like no kids are like, they're kind of forced to learn those things, but like if they're coming to like train for sports, they're loving it. So you get to be like the mentor of that. It's like there's nothing but fun there. So that's really
all
cool.
it is, man.
Yeah.
My thing with an athlete, when I get a new athlete, I interview an athlete. I interview all my athletes, because if they're not a good fit for my culture, then I refer them elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like, I know a lot of coaches will just take whoever they can. But for me, the number one most important thing in my gym is the culture, is how people feel. They like each other. They want to come and support each other. And if there's that one like rotten apple, right, I'm just throwing that shit out. I'm like, nope, like get out of here. Not that like I don't think that kid can be great, but like if they're just being downright, disrespectful and there's other stuff going on, then I don't have patience for that at this point. And I want people there that first of all want to be there, and second of all are supportive of others in their process. And I mean, I have professional athletes training alongside 14-year-old girls volleyball players and are like, you got this, and they're supportive. Like, where do you don't see that too often, and it's cool because the dunk community is very much like that.
Yeah, it's the best. It's pretty cool.
It's pretty freaking cool, man. Like, I mean, that dunk camp was like next level energy, support. It was kind of it was mind opening for sure.
Yeah, and that's like one of my favorite things about it, and I feel like it goes, I think the reason why it got like that is because it went from just like some people just seeing dunkers, like just when I was like looking it up, you just see like the pros, you see awesome dunks, people were fans, but then you saw people like training for it, and it was like, just like you were saying with the coaching of like sports, it's all fun. It's like everybody's just training for the same thing, just wants that moment to dunk and just like land new dunks. So there's like no negativity because you're not even competing, which is a thing. Like, you are competing in contests, but like just watching other people train is kind of just like, just for fun, man. It's just purely just to like see if we can all jump higher.
Exactly. I think that's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head with that one, man.
Let me know if you got to wrap it up whenever you got to go, by the way.
I'm good when you are, man. Like, I'm just kind of chilling. I'm had a long day. I'm in the air conditioning now, so this is phenomenal. I feel like we're just hanging out, and that's kind of cool.
That's my favorite. So, by the way, do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
Yeah, I mean, I used to listen to a lot more. I've been gotten really busy lately, but yeah, I listen to a handful of podcasts. Nothing specifically that like I prescribe to all the time. When I'm driving, I like Joel's podcast. The Just Fly podcast is a good podcast. They get good guests on, and it's very science heavy, and I love being able to pull from that and learn from that and reinforce things there. Yeah. But I love the other side of things and getting a little bit more holistic and I like both sides of the coin. Yeah. But I think I weight more toward the mental side of things as it relates to athletes and performance.
I was just asking because you brought up like you noticed that there's a lot of more like breathing coming into the training circuit. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wanted to see how you figured that out, because I listened to a podcast, I think it was Joe Rogan's or something, had some doctor on, but they were just talking about how, Wim Hof, have you heard of him?
Yes.
He's like the breathing expert, and it was just so
Mr. Breathing.
Yeah, he was like, it's all about, there was just so many things I didn't realize. Like, breathing's good. They tell you like breathe like deeply and, go for a run to like get your mind going creatively and things like that. And it was like, what I love is that like it came back to like the scientific reasoning and made the connection. It wasn't just like it's good for you, it's good for you, but like actually when you go for a run, you get your body moving and it makes you get more oxygen in your body, which then makes your brain work better and all those things. So I was just curious what you like saw about like the breathing aspect.
Breathing for me is entirely about regulating anxiety, cortisol levels, and dopamine levels. So I think a lot of it is the instructing and teaching athletes how to utilize abdominal breathing mechanics to get them out of here, right? Mm-hmm. To get them out of their chest where they live a lot of times. And I don't use a ton of I use a handful of breathing drills, but not a crazy amount. And a lot of it I try to work into, because what you don't want out of a training program, especially if you're going to someone, is like, you're coming here for like sport performance and like spending 30 minutes of an hour doing breathing. Mm-hmm. Like, you're going to lose they'll be like, I go to yoga for this. Yeah. And you're like, listen, like please follow along. It's going to kind of come full circle. So, using some breathing techniques for creating stability and tension, but then also using breathing techniques to help down regulate the nervous system and get people kind of learning how to recover a little bit more efficiently, getting out of that sympathetic into that parasympathetic system to help kind of to speed up recovery and things like that. So that's kind of where I I live a little bit more with the breathing mechanics. I also like the breathing mechanics as it relates to creating intra-abdominal stability and the technique, which is like an old weightlifting or powerlifting technique where big breath into the abdomen creates rigidity in the trunk that helps to stabilize the spine in flexion and extension, which is massively important for jumping, to be able to create a little bit more tension. There's only so much stability you can create in the abdomen during a jump because a lot of your forces are rotational, and it is very difficult to create anti-rotation, even though we spend a lot of time trying to create anti-rotation in an athlete. But the breathing mechanics really help with an athlete to produce power, learning how to exhale on an effort to be able to create additional power. Pull a lot of that from track and field. If you know, like a lot of track and field throwers will scream or yell when they throw. It's not just to show off or to tell everybody how strong they are. A lot of that is that expression of power through breath, constricting the abdomen down tighter, and it does actually help to create additional power. So trying to work that into jumping can sometimes be difficult because there's a lot of moving parts already. So you don't want to introduce that. Comes down the line when an athlete becomes a little bit more proficient in jump technique.
That sounds awesome, dude. I love your training methods, man. It feels like it covers all the basics, everything I think about, at least. It's like so cool, man, to see that you're implementing that. I guess my last question would probably be like, where do you see dunking going? Do you see it like growing? What are you looking forward to? Anything like that?
Well, dunking's first of all, it's already grown immensely over the last 5 years since I've kind of like fizzled out of the game. And I'm mad that I didn't get to like dunk with you guys in my prime, because it would have been awesome, a lot of fun to be able to throw down with you guys. But I mean, I think the next 5 or 10 years what you'll start seeing are just more well-rounded dunkers. So you'll see a prevalence of a lot more well-rounded dunkers versus the ones that were like, I specialize in this and I specialize in this. You're going to have a lot more athletes that are like your Jordans, that are trying to be just badass in every element of dunking, whether it's stylistically, whether it's just power, speed, height, all that stuff. You're going to see, I think, more of those athletes, because that's what you're going to have to do to be successful to compete.
Right.
I think you're going to have these outliers for a bit, and then what you're going to have is like the necessity of everybody else to be that good to be able to compete. So like, I think like you guys are doing a really good job down there. You and Isaiah and CJ and those guys, like you've come so far in such a short period of time, and you take training seriously, which is then going to be the next statement, which is understanding the importance of intelligent training, managing recovery, and treating yourself like a professional athlete. Yeah. Because it's, I think, long gone to the days that the dudes that could just go hoop and then go bang and dunk for a bit are gone. You know, I mean, some of the guys that were around when I was there, when I was in the game, I mean, there was dudes that like smoked cigarettes and like drank and then like getting high and then going to dunk. Like I can't imagine trying to get high and go to dunk. Like it wouldn't work. But like and it was just because they were naturally talented dunkers, right? So you're going to find a lot more people taking this seriously as a sport. And my hope is that it does make its way into some sort of higher level athletics, whether that is an Olympic event, whether that is some sort of like Commonwealth setting where you have best dunkers from countries coming together to compete, and it's going to be a pretty badass showcase. So that's where I see it.
That's awesome, dude. And then
you're like you're stoked because you're like, wait a minute, did you hear something? Yeah. Do you know what's going there?
No, I never really thought of like, because like I always think more people are going to be dunking, and like there's just going to be so many more people, because now they like, just like when that, I think I've said this a million times, but like that there's like that marathon mile minute or something, like you can't do a marathon in under 3 hours or something. Like it was impossible, and then one person did it, and then the next marathon like 100 people did it. So like dunk is the same way. So it's like, but I never thought of like people trying to do everything, because you like, I see people just dunking the way they can dunk, but it's a cool point that like they're gonna try to do like 1 foot or like the style on it and all the different aspects.
The only way I see dunking working at like an Olympic level or a highest level is if it's treated similarly to that, say, of like figure skating, where you have difficulties associated to different styles of dunks, and then the athlete will then select their dunk, it will fall within a category to say, even if I get a perfect score in this dunk, this is only an 8, right? If I do it perfectly, it's an 8. There'll be a handful of dunks that are considered to be 10s or whatever. And then it'll be breaking that column down into efficiency, into style, into power. So that's how I see it working. It's going to be a panel of judges. It's going to be done similarly to that of figure skating, where you're going to have. It's not just going to be like it is now, where someone can come out and bang a one hand that looks really cool and get a 10, and someone come out and do an East Bay gets a 9. Like, they're going to be categorized. I see it. That's probably the only way it could work at that highest level.
That's really dope, dude. And then I'll see you there as the first Olympic dunk coach, dude.
The Olympic dunk coach, maybe on a panel of judges. Who knows? And that's the cool thing is, like, having been around it for a while, but also studying jumping and in my mind seeing jumping a little bit differently than most people do. Nothing more fun for me than sitting and watching someone that is crazy dunker or stylistically dunk and then try to explain it. I think, like, that's my favorite part of the industry is coming up with ways to communicate what I see, right? Because I can be like, oh, the dunk was great. People see a dunk, but they don't see all the subtleties.
Yes.
And that's the only reason that my social media blew up, was because I think people really liked the way I spoke about jumping. Spoke about it differently. It's not all science. It is art. It is shapes. It is, it's movement. So I think that's what I like most about it.
That's awesome, Tyler. Well, thank you so much, man. It's been a while. Do you have anything you want to, like, promote, or your pages specifically you want to shout out real quick?
Yeah, I mean, you guys can check out Project Pure Athlete on Instagram. That's just all Project Pure Athlete, one word. I'm also on YouTube. It's not really built out, so I have like an old channel that's like my Tyler Ray channel. It's all dunk, so you can check me out on YouTube if you want to see me dunk. But I have a Project Pure Athlete YouTube that I'm just really figuring out content to go on, because I have a lot of stuff to teach, and I think I just need to get it out there.
Pump it out there, bro.
If anybody wants my services or is looking into programs, just holler at me. You can DM me. You can email me at info@projectpureathlete. But
Awesome.
Other than that, man, I just appreciate the opportunity to speak on your podcast.
Dude, anytime, dude. I'd love to have you back, of course, and we don't have to do dunk. We can do anything. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to just growing together, man. Thanks again, man.
I think what we'll do is too, because like I'm trying to bring my podcast. Like I had a podcast in the past, but I have the penultimate podcast that I'm looking for an opening, man. I'm pulled in a lot of directions right now, and I'm really just trying to get everything firmed up so that I don't spread myself too thin.
Awesome, man. I'm looking forward to that too. All right, man. Cool. Well, we'll talk soon. Thanks again, dude.
Peace.
Keep it nice. We'll talk soon, bro.
All right, brother.
See ya. Oh, that's the anthem right there. Tried to make an intro, ended up making an anthem.